Hello, everyone. Thank you so very much for joining. This is Just Ruth and Company, a new addition to my channel and a podcast that shares the raw accounts of failure, success, love, relationships, financial, societal, and all the other issues in between that we're affected by, giving useful tips and advice on how to live your best life possible. The worldwide confirmed number of persons with COVID-19 has surpassed 1 million. We're currently living through a pandemic and most of us are home, but there are still so many questions, some to be debunked. There's also a theory that this is the effects of 5G and not a virus, so COVID-19 is a hoax. We'll look at that. We'll also look at how viruses behave when they enter our bodies. We'll look at how we can stay safe during this time. All of that and more coming up right here on Just Ruth and Company. If you haven't yet, go right ahead, subscribe, like, and click the notification bell so you don't miss another episode. The company that I have today who will be answering the questions I mentioned earlier is no other than Orlando Gray, who is a senior medical technologist at Medical Associates right here in Jamaica. Hello, and thank you so very much for joining me. Of course, today on our podcast, as I would have said earlier, we have senior medical technologist at Medical Associates, Orlando Gray, and he's going to help us understand COVID virus a little bit better because he works behind the scenes. I was telling a friend, Mr. Gray, that nurses and doctors, we are so grateful for them. We're grateful for all the persons who are dealing with this pandemic close up. But who gets the closest in my estimation? The persons around the back. So for persons who may not really understand what your job entails, can you just briefly give us an idea?
Sure. All right. So basically, our job is to take the guesswork out of diagnosis. Uh, Without us, doctors would just be guessing what's wrong with you. So basically, we analyze body fluids, tissues, and other samples, and our results are used in the process of diagnosing and also treating patients. Without us, doctors would just be guessing what's wrong with you. So basically, we analyze body fluids, tissues, and other samples, and our results are used in the process of diagnosing and also treating patients. Uh, I don't know if you want me to give an example. So, for instance, let's say you are having lower back pain. You go to the doctor might be thinking something is wrong with your kidneys. They will first evaluate you physically, and then they will do some blood tests. And those blood tests will include tests for a substance called, I shouldn't say substance, but a biochemical called creatinine, which helps us to evaluate how well your kidneys are functioning. And another one called blood urea nitrogen, we usually call it BUN. Those two together help us to have a fair understanding of how well your kidneys are functioning. So depending on the levels of these two, you might be diagnosed as having renal failure or nephritis or, whatever the case may be.
Okay, interesting. So in the case of persons who are coming in, they're showing signs of COVID virus, what would that process look like for you on your
So first, on my end, all right. On my end, most of the times we will not interact with the patient directly. Most times we get a sample. And so we, well, first off, before that even gets to us, the doctors are usually the ones who screen the patients, or the nurse. So they'll ask you some questions about your travel history, who you've been in contact with, stuff like that. Um, Then we evaluate the symptoms. Well, not we, but the doctors. And usually it is a nasal swab or a throat swab or both. They can do both. It's not a pleasant thing, I must add. A lot of people are out here. I think a number of young people think that okay, it affects older people the most. So even if I catch it, I'm still all right. But it's just the mere fact that they're putting this swab so deeply into your nasal cavity. It has
So
to
they're
go
just
pretty deep.
right
Yeah,
there.
it's and it right, and they have to kind of swirl it around, try to get some of the tissues up from up there. So it's not pleasant. So
Sounds
I think
painful.
uh, it's I wouldn't say painful. It can be a bit painful, but it's very uncomfortable,
Mm.
right? So that swab now is sent to, I believe Yui is the one who is processing the samples at this point. Initially, we would send them off to be tested. But I think Yui and NPHL have acquired test kits, so now we're doing them here in Jamaica. I think NPHL hasn't started yet, but there are plans afoot to get that going. So um, that's a welcome change. Where was I? Right. So
Wait,
the
time
swab
to get
is,
to you. Yeah.
yes, the swab is so there are also serological tests that are available. Serological meaning blood tests. So what these I'll explain the difference between the two. Serological tests test for antibodies. Now, when your body comes in contact with a pathogen, a disease-causing agent, your body will produce these proteins that we call antibodies. So what they do is they attach to this foreign body and tell your immune cells to attack this thing. That's basically their job. So your body will produce these antibodies against, let's say, COVID-19. If you get infected, um, there are two types of general types of antibodies for this particular purpose. They're termed IgG and IgM. IgM antibodies are produced as an initial response to the infection. So within days, 2 weeks of being initially infected, your IgM levels will rise. As you overcome the sickness, then you start producing more IgG. IgG is for memory, so that if you meet this thing again, your body is already prepared to attack it.
Ah,
Right. So serological tests generally test for these two. So one will indicate that you are currently fighting the infection, and one will indicate that you have had a past infection, which is IgG. IgG would indicate past infection. Um, so serological tests for COVID-19 would definitely you would be testing for both these IgG, IgM, and it could be part of the screening process. It could be used as part of the screening process. Um, the danger with serological tests for viruses is that it depends on the levels. So let's say we caught it early, it might give us a negative
mm,
result. When you really do have it, it's just that you just caught it. Um, Also, there can be, I'm not sure if of what the case is for COVID because there's so much we still don't know about this virus. But my experience with other serological tests is that if there are similar viruses that you're exposed to, it false positive results. For instance, uh, let's say dengue and chikungunya. They're part of the same family of viruses called arboviruses. Arguably, you could produce similar antibodies for both. And
mm,
so if you've had chickpea, it's possible that you can get a positive test with the dengue.
yeah. Okay.
So the best test, the most reliable test is what is the PCR method. polymerase chain reaction. That's what it stands for. Basically, this tests for the genetic material of the virus. You can't get much more specific than that. And so the swab is the best method to test for COVID. Nasal swab, throat swab. So
Okay then.
currently that's the gold standard as far as testing goes. Yes, there's one important thing I left off. If you do get a positive result with the let's say you get a positive result with the serological test, the IgG IgM test, it doesn't stop there. No, you now have to move on to the PCR to confirm. So
So it's a
yes,
series of tests, really.
yes. If you get a positive, if it's negative, then usually we don't go further.
As we're talking about this, you know what I want us to discuss quickly before we even move on to how viruses really affect our bodies when they enter. A lot of persons, I don't know if you know about this, but a lot of persons have been talking about 5G and they're saying, hey, COVID is just a hoax. They're coming up with 5G, which is stronger than 4G, and we're just affected by these radioactive waves. What I'll ask you though is, what are the difference in symptoms as it relates to a virus and overexposure to radioactive waves?
Okay, first of all, you can't test for radioactive um, poisoning. So, I mean, that should have been a dead giveaway. But all right, fair enough. There aren't usually respiratory symptoms with radiation poisoning. It's usually so. What happens is that the radio waves penetrate certain organs. So you will have nausea, vomiting. You can have hair loss. Um, you can have stomach pain, stuff like that. Um, and if you take yourself out of the environment where the radiation is within days, 2 weeks, you can get over it. Um, the there is radiation all around us. I mean natural radiation, but it's very low. Adding another three to that would be the radio waves that the radiation that is not natural. So from like radio waves from stuff that is going on in our environment, you'd add another three. It still is not at the level to cause radiation poisoning. So in a sense, COVID-19 is a respiratory virus. So your symptoms will be largely respiratory. Coughing, sometimes sneezing, um, uh, shortness of breath. Radiation poisoning doesn't cause coughing
So I
and
think we
shortness of
can
breath typically.
So I think we can now say no, guys. I feel like based on what you said, I can now say it is not what it's not the 5G. It is in fact
No.
the COVID virus.
Yes, definitely. And well, I was going to well, I was going to go into a little bit about viruses, but I guess
Oh yes, that is actually the next question about how viruses actually affect the body once it enters.
all right. So first of all, viruses are you could look at a virus as a disease causing unit, a disease causing entity, because it cannot be I cannot call it an organism. Its DNA isn't complex enough and it cannot reproduce on its own. So what viruses do is that they enter your body and they hijack your cells and use them to reproduce. That's how they work. So for
Mm.
instance, for this particular COVID-19 virus, it has proteins on its outer layer that are adapted to attaching to respiratory cells. So cells lining that's the nasal cavity, the throat, the lungs. They are particularly they have a particular affinity to these cells. So they'll bind to these cells and they will enter these cells. The viruses are very, very small. We can't see them with a normal light microscope. and they are that small that they can even infect bacteria. So
Wow.
viruses are able to, yes. So in bioengineering, a lot of times that's what they do. They take viruses, they take RNA, they use viruses, inject RNA into the virus. RNA is ribonucleic acid, which is just a small unit of genetic information. Um, and they place it in a virus, and then they use that virus to infect bacteria, and then the bacteria replicate the sequence and make DNA, and then you can use that DNA to manage to do whatever. So that's how that works. So viruses can be useful too, because a lot of these things are used to to, in research to fix genetic mutations that people are born with. Back to the viruses, they are really small, so they're able to penetrate your cells and hijack them to reproduce themselves. Um, for COVID-19, the reason why the patients will cough and have shortness of breath is because the virus is doing just that with your lung cells. So, but as it does that, the lung cells tend to basically they tend to die. They tend to cause inflammation, and there's fibrosis in the hardening of the lung cells. So basically, imagine the cells of your lungs as a balloon. You blow air into it, it expands. You let the air out, it retracts. Because they have become so rigid, they can't expand as much as they ought. So that's why you feel shortness of breath, because you can't inhale as deeply as you usually do. Um, so that's how this virus works, and it will do that for the life its lifetime until your body gets rid of it, or until you. And I should also mention that for viruses, there aren't there is no antibiotic that works against viruses. Antibiotics are for bacteria.
Therefore, me taking some garlic to say, oh, I'm fighting COVID doesn't really work because it's for bacteria, not virus. Got you.
Yeah.
So what does
For
work?
viruses,
What kind of remedies work?
we just have to support. So you have to support the symptoms. Um, for the common flu, that's why they tell you to get rest, drink a lot of fluid. But there is no, and you will take your antihistamines or whatever for the runny nose or whatever your symptoms are. You can only treat symptoms. For viruses, it's largely dependent on your own body's defenses to get rid of it. So a lot of people, they hear that, they feel like they have the flu or whatever, they start taking vitamin C, or they start doing. That's not the time to start. You have
Before.
to be, yes, you have to be have the habit of strengthening your immune system from before, so that when you do get it, if you do get it, then you can bounce back quickly. So um, viruses do not, treating a patient with viral symptoms is not, mostly it's, as I said, supportive. So we have to, for the COVID-19 persons, you have to give them oxygen, you have to give them, or have them on respirators. We have to monitor their other organ function as well, because if you're not oxygenating properly, then it can affect other organ systems. So that has to be monitored. Um, Fever, we have to keep it down, stuff like that. So it's mostly supportive. Right.
How can I, as one person, Ruzan, spread this virus on a large scale if I don't even know that I have it?
Okay. All right. Um, so wearing masks is, I guess, better than no protection. But the mask is most effective on a person that is infected. Why? It stops the droplets from coming out,
Mm.
so that others will inhale it. You not being infected and being around somebody that is infected, having on that surgical mask, is not 100% effective, because there are holes, there are little holes on the side, there are holes here that the virus can still enter through, that you could still inhale it through. So the N95 masks are the ones that are recommended for close contact with patients who are exhibiting symptoms, and that's generally reserved for the healthcare workers who are dealing with these patients closely. Um, Goggles are also recommended because how viruses work is that they enter our body through mucous membranes. So the eyes are a possible site. The nasal cavity, further up in the nasal cavity, there are mucous membranes as well that the virus can enter through. Your gums are mucous membranes. So definitely goggles and N95 masks. The N95 masks are um, so fitted to your face that there are no spaces. And it's quite uncomfortable. I mean, it is uncomfortable to wear, but you have to.
It's a choice.
So
It's a choice.
there's that. Yes, it's a choice between discomfort now or greater discomfort if you contract the virus. So the easy choice is to just wear it. I see people wearing gloves.
Yeah.
I'd recommend we don't wear gloves routinely in like out in public space doing your shopping or whatever. I'd recommend that you don't use gloves. That is the best way to spread it. Why? The psychological effect. Because you are thinking, I have on my gloves, so
I'm
it's very
protected.
unlikely that I will. Yeah, I'm protected. So what you do is you touch everything. You take the money, you put it in your pocket, you touch that, you touch the supermarket trolley, you touch your steering wheel, you do
The
all
same
these things
gloves. Wearing the
with the same,
same
wearing
gloves.
the same. If you had a box of gloves and each time you had an interaction, you threw that pair of gloves away, it would be totally different. But people are wearing the same gloves all day, and what you're doing is that if you come in contact with the virus and it's on those gloves, everything you touch after that is potentially, spreading it by touching that thing. And so a lot of people, without even thinking, they have on the gloves, you collect money, you put it in your pocket, and then later you go home, you throw away the gloves, and you're handling the same stuff that you handled in the gloves.
Yeah.
Right? So in addition to spreading it around by everything that you've touched, you've also now infected yourself and potentially your family, because you have now brought this thing home on something you touched earlier while wearing the gloves. If you don't have on gloves, you're gonna be thinking, I need to wash my hands. I just touched this, I need to
I'm
wash
not
my
going to
hands.
touch that. I'm not going to touch that.
Yeah, because I'm not wearing, right. So the psychological effect is a key component. Um, the structure of a virus is quite simple. So there's genetic information surrounded by a lipid layer, and there are proteins suspended in the lipid layer. Hand washing disrupts that lipid layer. It's like adding soap to a grease water, the water with grease in it. It breaks up those lipid molecules into smaller pieces, and then you're able to wash it away easily. That's what it does to the virus. So basically, the soap emulsifies the lipids, and the contents of the virus aren't contained in an organized fashion anymore. And then you wash it off, and that's it. Um, there's a caveat though. You have to wash your hands for at least 20 seconds, because that process takes time. So
Also,
if you
just
just
do
wash your
it
hands for 10,
for 5 seconds.
won't work.
Just wetting up
No,
the virus.
it's ineffective.
Bathing the virus.
Basically, it's ineffective. So there has to be time allowed for the soap to emulsify the lipids that are encasing the virus, right? And it's the same for bacteria. Bacteria, some of them have this slime layer that soaps can also disrupt, and you can wash them off your hands. You don't have to use antibacterial soap. Any old soap will do. Hand sanitizer is effective only if it has 60% alcohol or more. It has the same effect of emulsifying
So,
the pit, right? But hand washing with soap is the most effective. Um, reason being is that you may put hand sanitizer on your hand, but there is a certain amount that you would need for it to be effective, depending on how much of the virus is, let's say, on your hand. So if you put the squirt like some of the hand sanitizer, the dispensers, the automatic ones. Sometimes I'll go someplace and I put my hand on the one and it's just this little toops baguette. Yes, that
it's
can't do
not
nothing.
enough.
No. So hand washing is the best way to get rid of this scourge from one of the best ways of preventing the spread, I should say. Social distancing definitely, and I think
Which is what
I think
we're practicing right now.
right. I don't think we're taking it very seriously. Um, I mean, just recently with the we had the curfew. So the thing is, people, the curfew is very important at this stage of our journey with this pandemic, because we're at the stage where it accelerates. That's where we're at. We're at the stage where it usually accelerates. So there's usually a very there's this spike that usually comes at about this point, and the government of Jamaica is trying to limit that as much as possible. And so the curfew is part of limiting that spike. Um, People are out on the streets drinking and doing all kind of things, and I'm just like, people, come on,
It, it,
we really we're really
it's
not
that,
taking it seriously, and until it hits home, until
that that's
it
the
affects
thing.
us or at the time we want it, but by then it's too late. And I know it is hard to be told. I hate being told what to do. So I know the restriction is just, it doesn't feel right, because you want autonomy. That's one of the things that we love as human beings. We love our autonomy, but we have to sacrifice that for the greater good.
So practice social distancing, wash our hands for 20 seconds or more.
Mhm.
Eat healthily now. Don't wait until you get the virus to try to say,
Right,
oh, I'm going to try to build my immune system, because by then it's already breaking down. Not that you shouldn't try to eat. Well, should you unfortunately get this virus, but
right.
beforehand, let's do what that we can. Before I wrap and leave, thank you so very much. This has been so educational. But before I go, what are some of the things that you or other persons in the medical field are practicing that maybe a little more than what the regular ones of us are doing, because you're so close to this virus? Or it's the same thing?
Well, for me, I feel like I was just talking to someone earlier that telling them that I feel like because of where I work, I am more likely to spread it. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, I have not. I mean, I started going to the gym like 2 months ago. I have not been there. I have not been to the barber. I have not. I have not been the places I usually go to. Basically right now I'm just work and home. As soon as I get home, I mean I live alone, but as soon as I get home, clothes are off, I go on bed. I don't sit anywhere. I don't touch anything. Um, and then after that, no, I can kind of relax. But I'm always mindful of the fact that I don't know if this patient that I've interacted with, um, has the virus. They may not know either,
Mm-hmm.
but because of the environment I'm in, I feel like I can be a potential vector for the spread of this thing, more so than someone who's just going about their daily life. So I definitely take extra precautions. Social distancing, definitely. I don't I try not to. I don't hug anybody anymore. I
I
don't.
don't know if the world is gonna go back to that. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think this virus has changed the world in ways that we don't even understand as yet, and it
That's
will
true.
become the new normal.
Hmm?
Um, it I already feel the change. Like I don't think we're going to go back to wide scale. I don't think we're going to go back to that. And for some people it might be a bit of an adjustment, but for me as an introvert, I'm cool.
You're like,
I'm good
oh,
with
this
it.
is what I've been doing all along.
Yeah, yeah. I've been doing this, you know. So
Is there any final word that you'd like to share with persons who are watching and listening, since we'll be on different platforms?
okay, definitely. It can be scary. Can be scary, but I would advise, I'd admonish everybody: don't panic. Panic never solved anything. Just take the precautions. Listen to the instructions from the Ministry of Health, from the WHO. Stop circulating the false, the fake news,
Fake
people.
news.
Um, I'd advise them, if you get it on WhatsApp, before you send it to someone else, check it out. Check it against the information that's coming from the creditable sources, the CDC, the Ministry of Health. Check check it out before you start spreading it. A lot of the times I've gotten things, and to be honest with you, as soon as I hear the foolishness, I delete it, because I get so upset. I get so upset when I hear these things. So check it out first. Ask someone in the health field. Does this Is this correct? Is this true? Check it first. Um, don't Just because you get it on your social media, don't take it as gospel. Just like that.
That's true.
Um, do not um, give heed to the fearmongers. I know, especially the older folks, they've been hearing that, they are at particular risk, and it is scary. It is scary, but don't let fear overcome you. Right? If you have faith in God, trust in God. Don't allow this thing to make you sit there, fret and worry, and make yourself maybe even sicker than you need to be.
Weaken your immune system.
Yes, I
Swear.
know. We weaken the immune system by worry. Don't let that happen. Um, if you do have the virus, if you do contract the virus, it is not the end of the world. It's not a death sentence. Don't give up. There are people who have beaten it. You can be one of those people too.
That was beautifully put. Thank you so very much for joining me today on my podcast. Hopefully, we'll have future chats
Sure.
since we'll be around to talk about post COVID. So, thank you for
Yes,
joining. Uh, have a wonderful day.
thank you. Same to you.
And that's it for today's episode of Just Ruth and Company. Hope you learned a lot. If you have more questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments bar below. Coming up in our next episode that you don't want to miss, we will be joined by registered nurse Yolande Tucker, all the way from Connecticut. As you know, the number of confirmed cases, COVID cases in America has surpassed Italy, and it's the highest in the world. So we'll get her take on that and a lot more. So make sure that you join us then. Bye-bye.